Hello and welcome back, everyone, from wherever you are watching this in the world. My name's Roger, founder of the Expedition Project. Welcome to Biomimicry Online Live Part 3. We're going to be joined by Sue Swain from BioWise in a minute, but just wanted to welcome everyone first of all and say, please drop us a note in the comments just to say where in the world you're watching this from so we know who is out there. Before we get started, I wanted to do a quick recap. Back to 2 months ago, we ran a fantastic online conference in which Sue and BioWise were involved in. And we did it all under the sort of context of trying to raise some money for organizations and researchers and such that were impacted by everything that's been happening with COVID and the lack of stuff that can go on because of everything that's happening in COVID and tourism and such. We managed to turn that online conference into a fantastic online course now. So all the conference presentations and talks are all available to watch on replay. So let's have a little look at this.
I love cats. Now the senior shark biologist at the ICT.
Perhaps the biggest success that I've had so far is actually to have survived so long.
So what an absolutely fantastic online conference that was. And as that video showed, it's now available as an online course. You can go through and revisit all the talks, all the discussions that were had. And Sue Swain from BioWise is one of 9 different speakers that gave some fantastic talks. It's 13 talks in total and 700 minutes of talks and informations and presentations. There's also virtual volunteering you can get involved in, calls to action. And at the end of it, you can even buy some merchandise similar to what I'm wearing right here. And all the proceeds go back to the organizations as well. So it's really a fantastic chance to get involved in something really special. So go and check that out as soon as you can. But back to tonight. So we're back to biomimicry again, one of my favorite topics. But before we bring Sue on, I thought maybe just good just to have a little look at what biomimicry is sort of in general. So have a look at this.
Imagine an experience that ignites the same spirit of adventure and pursuit of discovery as exploring the outer limits of space. But where the adventure lies not beyond our galaxy, but right here in exploring the extraordinary diversity and hidden depths of this planet. An experience that reveals how nature is a vast library of ingenuity we can learn from. A library filled with proven, real solutions for all our human development and sustainability challenges. Solutions based on the billions of years of research and development by the natural world's designers, architects, engineers, and scientists. This is the science of biomimicry, the practice of learning from and emulating nature's genius. Biomimicry is at the forefront of innovation. It is the next revolution, the natural revolution. Now, imagine the place that brings all this to life, that showcases and fuels this natural revolution. A place that brings the same kind of enchantment, thrills and magic to the world as Disney intended, but where the wonder does not lie in the realm of make-believe, but in the reality of nature's genius and the value of this genius to us.
Hello, Sue, and welcome back. How are you?
Hi, Roger. Great to see you again. I'm well, thank you, and welcome to everyone who's tuned in. I look
Definitely.
forward to
so good to have you back again, and excited to have another talk about all things biomimicry. So, obviously, as you know, and hopefully some of the viewers know, we've been working so hard in the background, developing some fantastic modules, all part of the Biomimicry online course. Have you been enjoying doing it so far?
Oh, yeah, no, it's been a great learning curve for me too, actually. Just shows that you never stop learning, and it's trying to, I think the real challenge has been to try and distill everything into, what's the most important message to get across in that, yeah. But it's been great fun, thank you.
So that video we saw now was sort of looking at the general sort of concept of biomimicry and a lot of the stuff that Sue's been involved in before. But let's have a look now at what we're working on and the sort of the angle we're going to take. So have a look at this. Love that video. So Sue, do you want to tell us a little bit about the sort of angle that we're sort of taking with all of this now, and why you decided to go down the route that we've gone?
Look, traditionally, biomimicry has always been an approach to innovation, and it's always been about reconnecting with learning from and emulating nature, but very much from a design's perspective. And what I felt would be an interesting thing that would maybe make it relevant to anyone out there, not necessarily people who are in the design and innovation space, would be to consider biomimicry as a way of being, a way of life. How can we make the actions of reconnecting with, learning from, and emulating life part of our everyday life in all that we do? So, yep, that's really, in a nutshell, the approach we're taking.
Perfect, thanks. So what we've now developed and sort of got online, we've got 5 modules that are all under the Biomimicry Online kind of umbrella. And through these live streams that we'll be doing each month, we're kind of taking a look at a couple of topics within some of these modules and sort of going through systematically so we can talk a little bit more. So feel free, anyone watching, even if you're watching on replay, feel free to send in your questions and we can answer them live or answer them afterwards as well. So the first live stream we did, we sort of looked at the general concept of biomimicry as a way of being and just the introduction to these courses. Last time we moved on to the kind of planetary setting and where we are in the universe and all that kind of thing. And now we're going to take a look at in this one at Spaceship Earth, the sort of operating conditions, and then some of the ingenious crew that are obviously involved in Spaceship Earth. So for the first little section of this sort of 3-parter in this live stream, let's have a look at this video, which is one clip from Module 2, and one of the lessons within that. So let's have a look at this.
Like any other spaceship, Gaia naturally needs to protect herself from outside forces and inhospitable space. With its vagaries of wayward comets, unruly shooting stars, meteors, unwelcome bursts of energy, and who knows what else. But unlike other spaceships, with their solid metal hulls and their tiny portholes that everyone has to jostle positions for to try and see through, well, Gaia has none of that. Instead, our means of protection is something entirely intangible. A thin layer of gases and an invisible force field. I mean, quite something if you stop to think about it. Actually quite remarkable and really rather wonderful. I mean, it means we have this brilliant, uninterrupted view of the galaxy on our travels. there for all to see, no matter where you may be seated in the craft.
I love the energy and all the humor, the stuff that you put into. Absolutely fantastic.
Had a bit of fun with that one, yeah.
So as you saw, the part one for tonight is Spaceship Earth. So one question that has sort of been floating about is, in this module, you're mentioning a lot about there are no passengers on board Spaceship Earth, we're all crew. So do you want to elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, sure. I think that's a really important point for us to get. Often, particularly like in the conservation and environmental fields, we speak about the ecosystem services being provided by nature. But bottom line is we're part of nature, and we're called to equally be contributing to providing those same levels of ecosystem services. It's how do we actually learn to do that, because every single living organism, from the biggest to the smallest, are all contributing to helping create the conditions in which all life can thrive. And up until now, kind of we've considered life to exist almost there for us, that they're there to provide us with these services and we're there just to receive and take. And really what we're called to do is actually become active participants, active crew members. So I make the point that, this isn't a cruise liner. Spaceship Earth isn't a cruise liner. It's a working ship, and we're part of that crew. And that's the exciting part, to feel that we can be part of this whole thing and equally contributing as a crew member, not just somebody sitting there and thinking everything exists to serve us.
And I mean, we've spoken about the last couple of months about how relevant a topic like this is, and the kind of perspective that you're trying to get everyone to look at now, through everything we've been through the last couple of years and everything. I just think it could not be a more relevant time to really just take a step back and actually look at some of these little lessons that you're talking about, the little tasks, the little way of thinking about things, the little exercises, which are all available, through these modules. I just think, it was relevant when I first heard you speak about it, 10, 15 years ago, and now it just seems to be even more relevant.
I think so. I think what's coming home more and more is just how interconnected everything is, that we are literally like this giant spaceship, and that, everything has an impact on everything else, and everyone has an impact on everyone else. And best we learn how to actually work with within those conditions and those systems, so that we can find a better way forward.
Fantastic. So if anyone's got any questions, either if you're watching it live, feel free to send it in, put it in the replies section or the comment section. If you're watching it on Facebook, just make sure to grant StreamYard permission to see your name. You can still post a question even if you don't do that, but it'll be harder for us to sort of see who's actually posting the question. But please, anything that you're thinking of, anything we're talking about, feel free to post a question. Let's get the conversation started. But that's part one, Spaceship Earth. It's really struggling to say that phrase there, Spaceship Earth. And the second part we're talking about, which you sort of go onto in the second module, is all about sort of life's, sort of Earth's operating conditions. So let's have a little look, another little clip from one of the lessons in there. Let's have a look at this.
Gaia is a living system. I mean, where we find and know that everything is connected to everything else. Everything depends on everything else. One can't exist without the other. And nothing happens in isolation. Anything that happens in one part of the system affects all the other parts. Things like, for every action there is a reaction, and there's no free lunch. Recognizing these realities influences how we think and act.
So obviously that's leading on so nicely to what you've just been saying about everything being interconnected. Can you remember sort of a time when it all suddenly became so clear to you, and you just suddenly realized this concept, and it was like a light bulb moment?
I think my light bulb moment really came when I first started with environmental education, my career in that. I'd done all my studies in nature conservation, and It was only when I then needed to start to teach that I started to realize just how extraordinary everything is. And for me, I think the one thing that really hit home was when I needed to teach on photosynthesis. And I realized that I, studied this at school, at Technicon, everything, and knew it backwards, but it had no real meaning until I needed to give it meaning so that it could actually, have some relevance for at that stage, it was children that I was running an education center for. And and in doing that, you just started to realize just how extraordinary how everything is connected. And I think it just really blew my mind from there. And and just opened up a whole new experience for me of seeing nature differently and valuing nature differently as well.
Do you think it's harder for someone who doesn't have a lot of access to nature around them, and they might be living in the middle of a city and stuff, to really make sense of this kind of concept? Or do you think it's as apparent and relevant in a big city?
Look, it's in fact, that's, maybe the strange approach I have followed with regards to conservation, is that I realize that out there, nature is pretty much able to look after herself. The systems have been operating for billions of years. Nature knows exactly what she's doing. But it's in our cities where we really need to learn the lessons the most. And yes, of course, it's not as easy to reconnect maybe with nature and with life on Earth when you're just, living in a concrete jungle as such. But it is amazing if you just start opening your eyes to what is out there, just to seeing those extraordinary plants able to grow in the cracks between paving. And if you just think of that, think of the resilience of that life, and, you start reconnecting in that way. And then you'll suddenly start to notice there is still so much life around you, even within that concrete jungle. And the more we can bring nature back into our cities, the more we'll start to engage and realize, just the opportunities that are out there to basically reconnect and learn from.
Yeah. So, in this model, there's obviously a lot of emphasis been placed on Earth's operating conditions. Why is that so important? What do you want to talk about with regards to that?
I think it's really understanding that if we look traditionally at biomimicry as that design approach to design and innovation, is the fact that nature designs in context. So context is king, and you ask any engineer, they understand that. And so for us, if we're going to live wisely and well on planet Earth, we really need to understand what makes Earth tick. What are the operating conditions within which we have to function? It's like, if we really do consider Earth as a spaceship, and compare it to a normal physical spaceship, you'd need to know how that operates. How is it powered? What are the conditions that make it tick? So that's really one of the most important things for us to get to grips with first and foremost, before you can practice biomimicry, is understanding the context within which everything needs to be functioning. So some of the conditions are the fact that, it's a solar powered planet. We're subject to gravity. Life on Earth is water-based. But then more succinctly, it's also about the fact that it is a closed system, just like a spaceship is an enclosed ship. That's what planet Earth is. There are no imports or exports, not from a materials perspective. Certainly we import sunlight, but that's it. And we export a bit of heat. So in terms of materials, what we have is what we've got here on Earth. So how do we work within that? The fact is that there's also no throwaway. Okay, you can't, we're not just on this ship that you can throw something overboard and there it's gone. It still remains with us. So how do we live in and design and operate in terms of that.
So if any one of these operating conditions are disrupted in any way, does that then just throw off the whole system, and does that throw it all into disarray, so to speak?
Well, look, the planet is dynamic, so it's subject to constantly changing conditions, and that's what it is. Life is this delicate dance, this balancing act between maintaining the conditions that are needed for life to thrive in the face of constant change. So planet Earth is very much a self-regulating organism. So it responds to those changes by increasing this and decreasing that. So yeah, there is this dance, this balancing act that we need to actually get to grips with. And in order to do that, you need to be attuned and responsive to the changes that are happening. So these are all the kind of things that nature has got to grips with and has learned to thrive within for more than 3.8 billion years. So that's the whole context and the pretext of biomimicry, is saying, well, we need to learn from that age-old wisdom as to how to work within those conditions in order to thrive.
Rather than reinventing the wheel into our own lives and all of that. This brings me to the sort of section that I think first inspired me and got me really excited. And I think it's probably the same for a lot of people. You know, it's hard to get to grips with something unless you have sort of real world examples, right? And unless you can see something in action. And I remember you first talking about, you know, things like termite mounds and things like, you know, kingfisher and all the little lessons that have been learned, which we're leading to now. So this brings us to part 3, which is all about, you know, the fantastic ingenious crew. So we've got a couple of examples. Let's have a look at the first example.
We have our engineer, the kingfisher, capable of diving at speed through air into water without creating so much as a ripple, let alone a splash. He can't afford for there to be a splash, as he's catching fish and a splash would frighten them away. And it's all thanks to the engineering genius behind the design of his beak, which slices through the water and spears the fish before his body enters the water and does create a disturbance. A remarkable engineering feat of fitting form to function. And on the right we have our master of design, who has a built-in combo air conditioning unit and insect repellent, powered by physics, not fossil fuels. His black and white stripes, absorbing and reflecting heat, set up air in motion above the zebra in the form of convective currents that cool him by up to 17%. An electricity-free cooling system that is even more efficient and effective the hotter it gets. Created simply by the interplay of light and dark colors combined with the natural effects of evaporation. And those same convective currents apparently disorientate and ward off biting insects who choose to go and settle elsewhere. And to top it all, he cuts down on material use by 50% by only adding insulating cells under the black stripes and not under the naturally heat-reflecting white ones. A master of design indeed.
It is just phenomenally fantastic. It really is, isn't it?
There are, I mean, nature is just extraordinary. I mean, you've got so many lessons within that, you know, the fitting form to function, the using the least amount of materials possible. And it's all in direct response to those Earth's operating conditions, to the fact that there's this closed system. So you've got to make use of what you've got, you know, and also tapping into what's freely available. So, I mean, I'll start to wax lyrical, so I'll keep quiet now.
Not at all. No, that's what it's all about. But before we look at another couple of examples, do you want to talk us through what sort of feature of nature's ingenuity has been the most remarkable for you?
I think it's really about the fact that they have learned to operate within the limits and boundaries. So the limits and boundaries being that we're this closed system, that we're subject to this constant change. And yet they've somehow found, you know, as a species, we tend to want to push through the limits and boundaries, you know, that we think that's the ultimate. No, we're not going to be limited and bounded by things. Nature's answer has been to say, okay, well, let's turn that into limitless opportunities to work within those limits and boundaries, never trying to break through them, but they have found countless ways. You know, they estimate there are between 30 and 100 million different species. So there must be between 30 and 100 to 200 million different examples of how to do that, because the reality is nature has done everything that we've ever wanted to do, but has never, you know, guzzled fossil fuel in the doing of that. And they've never polluted or poisoned the planet. So just those three things, you know, says to us, well, wow, we've got a lot of learning to do.
We've got to try again rather than
yeah, we've got to try
exactly.
again and learn how. And I think what's so exciting though is to understand that the opportunities are limitless. You know, and we do this, get this. You ask any engineer, the tighter the design brief, the better they can design. You know, if you just say, no, just go for it, they tend to go all over the place. But if you say, no, these are the conditions and that's what you've got to operate within and design within, they do a much better job. But for some reason, we don't want to actually respect Earth's operating conditions, which really have to be the bottom line for everything that we do. So, yeah.
No, so interesting. Okay, so we got another example about Ingenious Crew. So let's have a little look at this.
And let's not forget the remarkable chemists among our ranks who are able to gather up the elements they need simply from the food they eat and their immediate surroundings to produce miracle materials and products. Fireflies Fireflies mix chemicals together, enabling them to light up their internal body lantern, but are also able to switch the light on and off to generate a flashing effect that is actually a sophisticated mating ritual, with males going all out to produce the brightest, fastest flash patterns to impress the ladies, who rather demurely only flash once to indicate their interest to a mate whose light display has caught her attention and met her approval. Then we have the spider. He takes a fly in one end, extracts the chemical elements he needs, and then, using only ambient temperature and pressure, weaves 7 different types of threads to produce a silk fiber out the other end that, ounce for ounce, is 5 times stronger than steel. Some threads are so strong, if you could make a net out of strands no thicker than a pencil, you could catch a jumbo jet in flight. And some spiders even weave in UV reflective strands to alert birds to not fly through the web. And then there's our hippo. Well, he's just amazing, really. Producing the best sunblock there is. It has 9 properties rolled into one. It is non-toxic, UV resistant and water resistant, just happens to be antibacterial and antifungal too. And it cools, moisturizes and repels insects, and oh yes, it can self-spread. Particularly useful if you have particularly short limbs, a thick neck, and a rather rotund body. These crew members are truly chemists beyond compare.
So there we go. Looked at some engineers, some chemists. Yeah, it is truly remarkable. I was thinking about when watching that, it seems like through, you know, human beings sort of being on the planet and everything like that, we reached a real sort of peak of discovery and peak of, you know, potentially emulating nature around the sort of Renaissance period and, like, you know, Leonardo da Vinci and all of that. And then it just sort of all went wrong, I suppose, in the 1800s or something. I mean, is that about right or not?
Yeah. we do seem to have gone through these various revolutions that have just taken us on a journey of separating ourselves from nature and from the natural way of doing things. And I mean, they say it kind of started with the agricultural revolution some 10,000 years ago. And then we had the scientific revolution where, and just suddenly respect and awe for nature just became irrelevant overnight. And that was the time of, people like Francis Bacon and all of that. And that's when we began to torture nature for her secrets. And then we had the Industrial Revolution. And I think, up until that stage, even with a change in perception towards nature, it was still our muscle power that had been doing the damage. And as a result, we were doing the digging and all of that. So nature could actually regenerate because it was only our muscle power. But once we introduced fossil fuels and machines, we could dig deeper, further, faster. And that became a huge problem. And then, then that progressed to the petrochemical revolution, the chemical and revolution, all of that petrochemical. And I don't know, we kind of lost our way. And biomimicry is about really finding our way back to living in a way that is actually far more attuned and responsive to our planetary home.
Thanks so much, Sue. So we're talking about module 2 of Biomimicry Online, which is all about rediscovering our planet. And we've gone through a couple of examples today, so go and check that out. Sue, I wanted just to round off a bit of a takeaway from today, or a bit of an exercise, or anyone that's watched this can kind of have a bit more of a deeper think about it. What do you want people to take away from Earth's operating conditions?
I think, let's try and make it as practical as possible for people to start to understand what it means to really get to grips with Earth's operating conditions. And perhaps one of the most important ones we can think of nowadays is water. We know just how much water and the availability of water is being impacted through climate change and all of that. So to think that, realizing that all life is water-based, to think, okay, so how do I engage with water? But then to go outside and look at other organisms in nature, other life on Earth, and how does the rest of life on Earth engage with water? How do they use water? How do they access water? Are there differences between how I engage with water and how the rest of nature does? Are there differences? Are there similarities? And I think you'll really see that there are huge differences. And so what is it that we think we know that 100 million other species don't? That we work with water in such a, almost diametrically opposed to how the rest of life on Earth works with water. So just to start thinking around that, but make it deeply personal. Just think about me and me in my household, how I work and engage with water. And just take it from there.
No, fantastic. So if you're watching this, as I said, on replay or sort of checking in after we've gone live, send through your comments, send through what you thought about what we've been discussing today. Also, please go and check out Biomimicry Online on the Expedition Project website. Over the Northern Hemisphere summer and the Southern Hemisphere winter, we're offering a 15% discount because we've just launched Biomimicry Online. So you get a little bit off there, but it gives you a fantastic opportunity to really just test out some of the amazing sort of lessons that Sue's been talking about. We also then have, don't forget, as I mentioned at the start, 700 minutes of presentations in the Wildlife Conservation South Africa online conference, which is now available as an online course. Sue is involved in that as well, so go and have a look at that. I mean, there's so many different ways just to test it out, all very accessible, very collaborative, very affordable, and yeah, just learning from all the wisdom that is Sue Swain.
Well, actually, that is nature.
You're the middleman, aren't you?
I'm just interpreting what nature's brilliance. Yeah.
Sue, thank you so much. Always great speaking to you. Thank you so much for your time tonight. Just thank you. We'll see you again next time around in a month's time.
Great. And many thanks to you, Roger. And thanks again to everyone who tuned in.
Thanks, everyone. So, yeah, we'll see you in a month's time, back in September. For now, thank you so much. Keep sending in your questions and comments. We'll see you soon. Ciao.
Bye.